Hello everyone, this is Matt here and welcome to day 2 of the sketchbook challenge. If you're following along with that sketchbook challenge, we're going to be doing a drawing of an old man sitting in a chair here, and we're going to start with a line from the top of the old man's head all the way down to his feet. And that line's going to bend in a couple places because of course the man is seated. And then we're just going to draw the front edge of the face. We'll start with a circle and bring a line down and then draw a line back up for the chin. And now we can start to establish the back of the old man, and we'll put a couple lines to indicate where the chair may be. Once we've got this established, we'll figure out where the waistline is and the line for the shoulders, and then we'll basically just draw a stick figure. And each segment of the stick figure will draw a shape, in this case a couple of circles, and then some squares for the hands. We'll also draw an additional leg. Again, we're just creating segments here, basically like we would be drawing a skeleton. We're also going to add a few shapes for the feet as well. Drawing by putting together shapes, we're able to basically piece the image together a little bit at a time, just using simple shapes. Here we'll draw a couple of lines for the bottom of the chair. We may make adjustments to this later on in the drawing. We'll also figure out where the eyes, the nose, and the mouth are located, and then we can start to add some of the details, in this case starting with the hair. We're still drawing very loose at this stage in the drawing, and as we progress we'll get a little bit darker and heavier with our marks. We can also start to establish the overall form of the figure here. This old man is going to be wearing a jacket here, so we can use the bone structure that we created in the early stages of the drawing, and we'll simply just thicken things up as we add the details such as the jacket and in this case the pants. Of course, as we make our marks, we're going to draw very loosely and draw several lines instead of just one line. These of course are still preliminary marks that we'll be able to strengthen later in the drawing. We'll also put a little indication of some wrinkles in the pants as we go up. So we're not just going to draw a line that's straight edged along the side of the pants. We'll give a little bit of an indication where the pants might get a little thicker and thinner in areas. We'll go ahead and define the shape of the chair that he's sitting on here with just a few loose marks. Alright, now we'll continue and add a few more details here with the hair, a few strands of hair sticking up, and of course the hairline. Then we can get a little bit more specific here. We'll add a nose, an indication of an eye, and a line for the mouth. Of course, since these are not the finished marks, we can still be relatively loose at this stage. I think a lot of beginner artists feel like you have to make the final mark the first time, and that's not necessarily the case. You can be really loose throughout the drawing process and then slowly become a little bit more precise as you go. We're going to bring the side of the jacket down over the top of the chair. And you can see here I'm just drawing over the top of the lines that I've already got on the surface. Of course, I'm drawing on a drawing tablet, which makes erasing a little bit easier, but if you're using a drawing pencil, you can always go back and erase some of these light marks that you produce early in the drawing. We're also going to take a little bit of those lines off the bottom of the chair and make it seem a little bit more believable. Right, at this stage we've got enough information on the surface that we can go back over the top of it with our bolder lines. In this case, I've switched to a mark that is similar to that of ink. And as I make these marks, I'm going to let the line get thicker and thinner in areas. So I don't necessarily want a uniform line. I want a line that has a little bit more interest and variety in it. So the line's going to get a little thicker and a little thinner in areas as I make the marks. And since I am working on a tablet here, I'm able to adjust the amount of pressure that I put on the pen, which will make the mark a little bit thicker. If you're working with an ink pen, of course you can do the same thing. With a little bit less pressure on the pen, you can vary the line and make it a little bit thinner. And of course with more pressure, you can make it a little bit thicker. Oftentimes people overlook this little detail here, which makes your drawings a lot more interesting. We're going to go ahead and add a pair of glasses on this old man. It seems like most older people do wear glasses, so adding the glasses will make him look a bit older. And we can also define the front edge of the face with a little bit more detail here. Now just working our way down here, we'll add a few more lines for the bottom portion of the hair. We'll go ahead and accentuate the bald area on the top of the head here with a stronger line. And then we can also make a few more marks to the face just to add a little bit more of an indication of some detail. Now we can work our way down to the clothing, and of course we're going to start with the collar, and then we'll just accentuate the back edge of his jacket here with a few lines, and that line can be broken too. It doesn't have to be a solid line. Since we are using more of the finished drawing material here, the ink marks that I'm making here is what I'm talking about. We're going to try to make the line a little bit more precise than we did earlier in the drawing stage where we made the sketchier lines. At this point in the drawing, we're using those sketchier lines or that sketch underneath as a guide for the finished drawing. Now, if you're using pencil for your sketchy lines, of course you can go over the top of it with ink, and then once the ink is dried, you can erase all those pencil lines. Of course, you can go over the top of those sketchier lines with a softer graphite pencil, which will make a darker mark, and it'll kind of cover up those sketchy lines. Sometimes it's nice to see the sketch underneath the finished drawing anyway. Just a few more lines here to indicate the wrinkles in the jacket, and then we'll bring down a line for the front part of the old man's suit. We'll add a few diagonal strokes here underneath the arm to create a little bit of shadow. That'll give us a bit of an illusion of form and depth in here, and it will also make the figure feel more three-dimensional. We're not going to get too detailed with the hands, just a few marks over the top of the sketch to create the shapes of the hands. And we're still going to keep things pretty loose on the chair as well, just a couple lines to indicate the shape of each one of the legs of the chair. And then of course underneath the figure on the chair, the value is going to get pretty dark. We're going to have some shading down there. So we'll go back and add that shading in just a moment. But until we're ready for that, let's go ahead and define the contour of this leg here. You can really see there how the line gets thicker and thinner in areas and how that adds a bit of interest. And then of course we'll add a few wrinkles here as well. Maybe a seam down the side of the leg here where the pants are sewn together, and then a little indication of a pocket there. All right, now we'll go ahead and add our ink, so to speak, to the side of the leg here with a bit of shadow. And here again, since the light source in most situations is going to come from above, the shadowed areas are going to be underneath, and in this case, underneath the leg here. And then on to the second leg, and here again we're going to basically trace out the contour lines or the outlines first, and then we're going to go back and give some indication of the wrinkles. And if you're kind of wondering where you should make the line a little bit thicker, wherever there is shadow or wherever the object that you're drawing gets a little bit thicker, that's a good place to make the line a little bit thicker as well. And of course we'll vary the line quality in the wrinkle marks that we make in the pant leg as well. And then since this leg is tucked under the first leg, of course it's going to have some shadow on it. So again, we're going to try to keep our lines uniform here and space those lines apart from each other relatively closely so that the value or the shading is a bit darker. We'll go ahead and put a little bit of shading underneath the figure as well on the chair. A bit of cast shadow exists down there. And then we'll move on to the shoes. Here again, we're not going to put a whole lot of detail on the shoes. We're just going to add some marks here to make them look a bit darker. And of course, we'll add those marks after we've established the contour lines initially. And of course, contour lines are basically just the outlines. So now that we've got those contour lines in place, we're just going to again create consistent marks here that are spaced close together so that it makes the shoes look like they're nice and dark. A lot of times new artists will get obsessed with all the details that they see in a drawing or all the details they see in a subject, and they want to put all those details in the drawing, and that's really not necessary. We'll also put a little bit of cast shadow underneath the chair and maybe a little bit underneath the foot there where the leg goes back a little further up. And now we can erase the lines that we no longer need, and our drawing is just about finished. Actually, I'm going to go back in and just put a few more detail marks here and there in the drawing to finish things up. Remember, if you want to check out more tutorials like this one, visit sketchbooknation.com.